One wrong move, and the most powerful king would die. Uzziah was a simple king. He built a kingdom so strong that no army, no warrior, and no leader could take down. He grew very proud of his nation, but that pride would soon be the reason he would die.
You will not stop me!
After King Amaziah was killed in Lachish, the people of Judah made his 16-year-old son king. His name was Uzziah. They brought him to Jerusalem, set him before the court, and placed the crown on his head. The officials bowed. The priests offered prayers. And just like that, a teenager was responsible for an entire kingdom. He had grown up in the palace watching how a kingdom worked. He had seen his father receive generals. He had listened from doorways to reports from the borders. The young king needed guidance, and early in his reign he found it in a man named Zechariah, a man who understood the ways of God and spent his time teaching Uzziah what it meant to truly fear the Lord. Uzziah listened. He sought God, and God made him succeed. The first thing Uzziah set his eyes on was Elath, a port city at the tip of the Red Sea far to the south. Uzziah called his commanders to the war room. He spread out the maps, looked around at the men standing before him, and said,
"From this horizon, we march to victory."
"Elath belongs to Judah. We are taking it back." He pulled on his armor himself, walked to the stables, and mounted his horse. His army fell in behind him, column after column of soldiers moving south out of Jerusalem through the Judean hills. They pushed further south, until at last the cliffs of the south came into view, and beyond them, the glimmer of the Red Sea. When they arrived at Elath, Uzziah wasted no time. His forces moved into the city, drove out the men holding it, and the army stayed to tear down what needed tearing and rebuild what had fallen. When they were finished, Elath was Judah's again. Uzziah turned his horse around and led his men back north, the first campaign of his reign complete. He did not rest long. He turned his attention west toward the land of the Philistines, a people who had pressed against Judah's borders and raided its villages for generations. Uzziah loaded his army back onto the road, this time heading west and north toward the coast. When they finally arrived outside the ancient city of Gath and its high walls came into view, Uzziah gave the order. His men moved up with battering rams and siege equipment, and they worked at those walls until they cracked and came down in clouds of dust. The army gathered itself and marched north along the coast to Jabneh, where the same thing happened, walls broken and collapsed. Then south to Ashdod, where they pushed through the defenses and broke into the city. Uzziah set up Judean towns in the land around Ashdod, planting his people in the soil the Philistines had once controlled. The Philistines, who had raided and threatened Judah for as long as men could remember, now had no fortified cities left on that stretch of coast. He had taken them apart one by one. He then turned south and east, leading his forces against the Arabians living in Gur-Baal. His army moved through the open land, found them, and defeated them. He struck the Munites next, and they fell before him. When word of all this reached the Ammonites, they looked at each other, looked at the trail of defeated peoples behind Uzziah, and made a decision. They gathered silver, put it on the backs of their animals, and sent it to Uzziah without being asked. They paid him tribute and sent word that they were under his authority. His name was now known from the borders of Egypt all the way to distant kingdoms, because every nation in the region was hearing the same reports. Judah's king was winning every campaign, every time. But this wasn't going to last long. Back in Jerusalem, Uzziah poured everything into strengthening the city. He ordered towers raised at the corner gate on the north side of the wall, at the valley gate on the west. When the towers were finished and standing, he placed soldiers in them, men armed with bows and slings, watching the roads and the horizon. He sent workers out into the wilderness beyond the city to dig cisterns in the rock for his livestock and his farming crews working the dry land. He put farmers to work across the fertile hill country, planted vineyards on the terraced slopes, and made the fields of Judah productive from one end to the other. He was building not just an army, but a kingdom that could feed itself and sustain itself through long campaigns. But what he didn't know was that building this whole kingdom would one day lead him to make one fatal mistake. Then he turned to the army itself. He took a full count, going through every region of Judah and counting every man capable of bearing weapons. The number came to 307,500 soldiers, organized under 2,600 officers who commanded them. Uzziah armed every single one of them. He walked through the armory storehouses with his commanders, ordering shields made, spears forged, and helmets fitted. Not one soldier stood unarmed. And then he did something that no king before him in Judah had attempted. He brought in craftsmen and engineers and had them design machines of war, heavy devices mounted directly onto the towers and walls of Jerusalem, built specifically to shoot arrows and hurl large stones at an enemy approaching the city. When the nations around Judah looked at Jerusalem after all of this was done, they saw a city that could kill you before you got within 100 yards of its gates. His fame reached every nation around him. His name was spoken by kings he had never met. The kingdom of Judah, which had been shaken and uncertain when his father was murdered, was now standing stronger than it had in a generation. Uzziah had built it, armed it, fed it, and defended it. And he had done all of it while still seeking God. But this was the place, right here at the height of his power and the peak of his glory, where something inside Uzziah quietly began to change. Every victory had added to his confidence, and all that confidence had slowly turned into something else.
Before we
Room for limits, no room for boundaries, no room for anyone to tell him what he could and could not do. One morning, Uzziah rose from his bed, walked through the palace, went to the temple storehouse, and went inside. He looked at the golden censers, kept there, the ones the priests used to burn incense before the Lord on the altar of incense in the inner sanctuary. He reached out and took one. He walked back out through the palace court, through the street of Jerusalem, and into the outer courts of the temple, the golden censer in his hand. People stopped and stared as he passed. The king kept walking, deeper into the temple complex, moving past the outer court toward the inner sanctuary, where only the priests were permitted to go. Azariah, the high priest, saw him coming and understood immediately what was happening. He turned to the priests nearest him. "Come with me now." More than 80 of them moved together, crossing the court to intercept the king before he reached the altar. Azariah stepped directly into his path and stood there.
Uzziah, it is not right for you to burn incense to the Lord. This is not your duty. Leave the sanctuary. You defy the divine command?
I follow my conscience, not blind faith.
Disobedience brings ruin upon us all.
Then I will bear that burden.
So be it. We cannot let you pass.
The priest stood in a line behind Azariah, blocking the way forward. Uzziah stopped. He looked at the high priest. He looked at the row of men behind him. He was the king of Judah. He had rebuilt this city and armed its walls. He looked at Azariah, and anger rose in his chest like heat, fast and bright. He opened his mouth and raised his voice at the priest standing in his way.
You will not stop me!
And then, Azariah's eyes moved to the king's forehead. He pointed. The priests nearest to Uzziah stepped back, several of them at once. Uzziah raised his free hand and pressed his fingers against his own forehead. His skin felt wrong. He pulled his hand away. The leprosy had broken out on his forehead right there, in that moment, while he stood beside the altar of the Lord, with a censer in his hand, as written in 2 Chronicles 26. Azariah and the priests moved in around him, not to restrain him, but to push him toward the door, hurrying him out, their hands on his arms and his back, moving him out of the sanctuary as fast as they could, because the mark of leprosy was visible, and everyone knew what the law required. Leprosy was a terrifying disease. Under God's law, anyone who had it was declared unclean and had to leave the temple and live away from the rest of the people, as it is talked about it in Leviticus 13:45. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. From that day on, everything changed. Uzziah could no longer enter the temple or continue ruling the people as king. Uzziah did not fight them. The moment the disease appeared on his skin, the anger drained out of him, and he moved toward the exit himself. He walked out of the temple and back through the streets of Jerusalem, and the people who saw him turned away from him as he passed. He was given a house of his own outside the palace, a place to live apart from the court and the people and the ceremonies of the kingdom. His son Jotham walked into the royal palace and took his father's place, managing the government of Judah, receiving officials, hearing reports, running the kingdom while Uzziah sat alone in his separate house. The man who had torn down the walls of 3 Philistine cities and mounted war machines on the towers of Jerusalem now lived by himself, cut off from the throne and the temple and every court he had once commanded. The leprosy never left him. He lived that way until the day he died. When he died, they buried him near his ancestors, but in a field beside the royal tombs rather than inside them, because the people said a man with leprosy could not be laid with the kings.